Hey friend, welcome back to the Care Collective podcast. If you're new here, this is a space for caregivers, the ones that are holding so much, often quietly and often without enough support. And today's episode is really special because this is our 25th episode, and I've been thinking a lot about what that actually means. And first of all, I have to say that I'm just amazed that we've been able to build this little community, this little corner of the internet, especially for those of you that have now listened to more than one episode. That just blows my mind that you even want to listen to anything I have to say, but also to create space in your life for these other stories that people have shared, because I think really the main thing that I have learned through this process has just been the power of community and the power of healing through people and through stories, and they're sharing your own story. So for this episode, I really wanted to just highlight 25 different things that I feel like I have learned from these different conversations with caregivers. And these have been caregivers from all sorts of walks of life, both professionally, both family caregivers, for aging parents, for parents that are dealing with terminal illnesses, just so many different angles. And I truly feel like my life has been made so much better by every single person that I know. So I know that you guys are doing the important work of making other people's lives so much better. I literally just read a headline this morning that they ran a new study to kind of measure how much people are caregiving and how much it, in a small way, in a large way, contributes to the economic activity if they could put a dollar amount behind it. And it said that now there are so many people that are caregiving for their family that you could measure it as $1 trillion. Like if you could put a cost to the time that you have spent. And so I know that there are so many of you, so never feel alone in what you're facing. And I've realized that throughout this process, there's a lot of things that every caregiver has experienced, but that a lot of people don't really say it out loud. And I've even seen people that, didn't want to admit they were a caregiver or didn't realize they were a caregiver. Maybe they didn't self-identify with the word until they ran across other people on the internet and kind of saw the way that they took on this word as part of their identity, but still learning to keep your own identity outside of what you do or who you are. So today, I just wanted to share 25 things that I have learned from talking to caregivers, and these are things that have come from real people. And without further ado, let's get into it. Lesson number 1, caregiving often starts long before you realize you're a caregiver. There are so many people that just start with small things to be able to help a loved one, and then before you know it, you're doing everything all at once. And I think that's a very common experience. Number 2, a lot of caregivers don't choose this role. They step into it because nobody else will. I think there's a lot of caregivers that step in out of obligation, and maybe you even have your own family saying things to you like, well, clearly this is a lot. Why are you going to keep taking care of them? But it's because you feel that deep sense of duty and the honor that comes from it. And I think that is so admirable. And number 3, the emotional weight is often heavier than the physical tasks. I think this has been the biggest thing I have seen, whether it's anticipatory grief, whether it's just, feeling overwhelmed at all the things you have to manage. It's the emotional side that can get cumbersome way more than anything else in your life beyond the physical tasks that you're trying to complete. Number 4, feeling alone is one of the most common experiences everyone has, even when you're surrounded by people. You might literally be with somebody 24/7 as you're taking care of them, but you can still feel alone and isolated, and that is completely normal to experience that. And I think, again, that's what I have seen from this community is the power of connection and the power of being able to find other people that are in your shoes, so that you're not alone. Number 5 is that caregivers don't just need help, they need people who understand. Like, it's one thing if a friend wants to bring you dinner, but it's another for them to sit there and listen to you and to ask you, how are you doing? And to genuinely mean that, right? So important, and you need those kind of people in your life. Number 6, there's a difference between support and there's a difference in people being present. And again, this kind of builds on the last point. You really want people that are going to look you in your eye and genuinely care about you as a person outside of the things that you are doing. Number 7 is that guilt shows up in ways that no one talks about, especially when it comes to rest or to self-care. And I think it is completely normal to experience that guilt. But I think on the flip side, it's also so important that you work on not feeling guilty for taking time for yourself. That you don't feel guilty for telling your parent, no, actually, so-and-so is going to take you to the appointment. I know you like for me to take you, but I can't do that today, right? Being able to step up for yourself is really advocating for your person. Number 8 is that many caregivers struggle to ask for help even when they desperately need it. I think this one is a, trait that is present for everyone, regardless of whether or not you're a caregiver. But I think it especially attaches itself to caregivers because you are so used to being that strong one for everyone else and holding everything together that it just makes it even harder to ask for help when you need it. And I think that is something I know I can work on and a skill that I'm always working on. Number 9, burnout doesn't always look like breaking down. Sometimes it can look like completely shutting off. It can feel like going numb or just doing what needs to be done without feeling anything anymore. And I think that is a stage that so many people reach when you just get so overwhelmed with your feelings. And my hope is that talking about these things we'll be able to encourage caregivers to be more preventative in these things, to take a self-care day, to work on building a community of support, right? So that you do not reach that point. Because I think that as much as it can be a pain to feel the guilt or to feel the grief. Somebody I was talking to last week for an episode was discussing losing her son and saying, my grief is just evidence of how hard I loved. And it's not that I want to go through feeling grief, but I am grateful that it shows me how deeply I loved this person. And so I think sometimes it's just about shifting your perspective to handle your emotions so that you don't get to the point of completely shutting them off, because that's just not going to be ideal. That's not a good coping mechanism, because if you shut it off, you're going to feel these feelings at some point. And when it becomes a flood and it becomes unmanageable, that's when things can get really stressful, right? Number 10 is that the healthcare system can feel confusing, overwhelming, and isolating because it's just a beast. But I'll say kind of hand in hand with this is that there are so many amazing people that are really trying to make the healthcare system a better system, or at least influence their little corner of the healthcare world. And so sometimes you just have to keep trying as hard as you can to find your little corner of the world where somebody's going to advocate for you. And I have personally felt this and seen how hard it can be to find a good doctor, to find a good, care team that is going to put your needs first. But once you find that, it is so invaluable and can just really change your whole outlook on everything. So just know that if it feels confusing and overwhelming, there are healthcare professionals that know that and have worked in this industry for a while and feel the exact same way. But there are people that want to answer your questions and want to help. And if that's ever something you need, please reach out, and I'm happy to connect you to other individuals that can provide more support. Number 11 is that caregivers often become the expert in things they never wanted to learn. Something that I have seen time and time again is that so many of these caregivers start off being the first one in their friend group or the only person in their family that takes care of another loved one, right? But then the time comes where their friends are suddenly having to take care of their family, and you become the resident expert on how do I navigate picking a nursing home? I think my mom just had a medical emergency and things are about to start progressing. Like, what am I supposed to be doing, right? And there can be a lot of responsibility that it feels like that takes on. But I think in some ways it is very fulfilling for people to be able to give back and to see that if nothing else, your experiences are given to you to be able to help another person. So I hope that even if you're not at that stage yet, just know you will probably get there someday. And I hope you'll be able to look back at this time in your life with so much gratitude for the person that you were, the things that you went through, and gratitude that you are now able to turn around and help somebody else get through these experiences and learn from the things that you wish you could have done differently. Number 12 is that there is grief even in situations where no one has passed away. So I think this one is one that's hit me the hardest because, society is already not very well versed in grief. We're not very good at understanding it. We're not very good at saying the right things as hard as we try to show up for people. So when it comes to something like anticipatory grief, where it's not necessarily present, like you wouldn't look at someone and be like, oh yeah, I bet you're getting so stressed out about what's going to happen to your loved one, right? The same way that everybody knows, oh, your loved one just died, let me come bring you a casserole, So I think that's what can make it so difficult. And it's especially the grief where you're grieving your own identity, that maybe things have changed in your life, or you're worried about, over the holiday season, we talked about the fact that holidays are going to be different. You might not be able to do the same traditions, and it's just this overwhelming grief that can feel so suffocating for what you're experiencing and what you're going through. And so I think, again, giving yourself grace and trying to process that grief and work with it instead of against it is something that can really just help change your outlook and help you be nicer to yourself throughout this process. Number 13 is kind of building on this again. I think all of these things are tied together, is that a lot of caregivers feel like they've lost a part of themselves. I find this so much, and especially talking to people that have finished their caregiving experience, their caregiving journey, and are looking back at everything and just feeling like they don't know who they are anymore. And so I think that's advice that I could give to people in the middle of caregiving, is to try to make sure you still maintain your own hobbies, your own things that you are outside of caregiving, so that you don't feel like you are losing your identity as a person. And if you are somebody that is currently experiencing that identity crisis, just know that you will find things that will make you feel like yourself again, that will bring you joy, just the same way that these other things did. Because I think just as much as you fell into caregiving, you can fall into other things. And maybe that means you're a caregiver advocate now. I've met so many amazing individuals that have written books about their experiences to be able to help other people. There is so much power to your story, and whether you share it on something like this podcast or you start your own journey to share your story, I've just, again, seen the power that comes from that. Number 14, in line with this identity crisis as well, is that a lot of people don't know how to go back to their original self prior to caregiving. I think in some ways you're going to feel like you have forever changed and you're not going to be the same person. I don't think there's anything else to really add to that point. You are going to be a different person, and hopefully you can see the parts of you that have become stronger, more resilient, just truly a hero, because it is hero's work. Number 15 is that family dynamics are, I want to say, maybe one of the hardest parts of caregiving, because I've had so many conversations with people that were doing everything and siblings stepped back completely, or situations regarding the finances of caring for someone where you thought they were going to provide support and then they didn't, or maybe somebody is the medical power of attorney and you don't agree with the decisions that they're trying to make because it goes against what your mom actually wanted, right? There's just so many dynamics and so many things that can come into play here, because family is already complicated, and then when you add in these high stress situations, it's just going to get more complicated. So just know that, again, if you are at the start of a caregiving journey, the more you can work on those relationships with family and maybe even outline legally what these responsibilities are, the better it's going to be. And if you are in the middle of it, again, there are legal resources that can help you kind of navigate these situations. And if nothing else, I'm always a proponent of taking therapy and, talking through your relationships. And there have been many times where I have just needed a person to speak up and speak for the other person and give me a perspective as to why they may be acting the way they are, because I think we can get tunnel vision and, let our emotions get in the way of it. But sometimes having that therapist or that other person to bounce ideas off of and talk through what's happening can really help you wrap your mind around everything. 16 is that some caregivers carry resentment and they feel ashamed for it. I have talked to so many people that are just angry at the illness that they carry. They're angry at their parents for not making decisions and putting them in this situation. I think, again, resentment kind of goes hand in hand with that guilt. You can love your family deeply, but you can still feel that anger and not know what to do with it. 17 is that there is no perfect way to do caregiving. I'm just going to leave that one there, because every single person I have talked to has had a completely different situation, completely different things that they have done. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, you're doing exactly what you need to be doing. I know we've had a lot of conversations about looking back and seeing things you could have changed, but again, I still think that there's power to just owning it and saying, I showed up, I did the best I could, and that's what matters. Number 18 is that small moments of connection can mean everything, both to caregivers and to the person you're caring for. I always think about how it's easy to get annoyed at the grocery store and somebody's trying to talk to you in line and be like, I've got so much to do today. I'm not trying to stop and have a conversation with you for forever, right? But you never know if that's the one conversation that person gets to have all day. Maybe they've been in the middle of taking care of their mom, right? And maybe they just wanted somebody to talk to, someone to look them in their eyes, right? So I think being the kind of person that's open to connections and open to helping other people, I just feel like the more you can give, the more you can receive in that sense. And I'm not necessarily a person that has put a lot of stock into the idea of karma, but I do believe that, if you are the one trying to be open to making these connections and putting good things out into the world, that is going to come back to you, and you will eventually get people that'll be in your corner. Because if you want to have a village, you have to show up and be a villager. I've heard that quote on the internet lately, and I think it's so true. Be the friend that drives people to the airport or different things, right? Number 19 is that caregivers are often stronger than they feel, but I think that strength can come at a little bit of a cost. Like I said, that grief educator I was talking to earlier this week, I loved the way she put it, that she's got a whole career now being able to help and support other people through their grief. And as fulfilling as that is, it's not like she would, wish that she could have her son back. Like she's always going to wish that she hadn't gone through what she's been through. While she can be grateful for that. So I think learning that your emotions are going to be complex and you're going to be all over the place, and that's completely normal. Number 20 is that being the strong one can feel incredibly lonely. And I know I have felt this so many times in my life myself, where when you're the one bearing a lot of that responsibility, it can just be really hard to process it and to work through all of that. So know that, you'll find your people and you'll figure everything out. Number 21 is that self-care is often misunderstood, and I think sometimes it looks like hard boundaries and not bubble baths. And that is a hill I will die on, because for one, self-care is so individual and so unique, and it's not meant to be a list of 20 things you can do for self-care, right? Like, the way that I find self-care is going to be completely different from somebody else. And so that's why one of my absolute favorite questions to ask people is, what is their favorite form of self-care? Because I ask this to give you guys more context and more ideas for ways that you can find self-care. If that comes from a bubble bath, I love it. If that comes from shopping, as long as you're not a shopaholic, I think go to TJ Maxx and Ross as many times as you want if it helps you through this, right? But again, I think it's understanding coping mechanisms. It's understanding what is going to help you work through your stress in a healthy way and what is just masking that stress, right? Like, are you just trying to ignore your feelings, and so that's why you're going to eat a pint of ice cream? Or can you do something like going on a walk and try to get your nervous energy out and try to do a breathing exercise to relax yourself, right? And again, I'm not saying don't go eat ice cream. Absolutely eat as much ice cream as you want, but I think it's balancing the moments where you just let yourself do whatever with something that is going to help make your brain happy and help you calm down. And number 22 is that many caregivers don't feel seen even by the people closest to them. And I know we have brought up elements of this throughout this episode, but I think one of the hardest things is when you feel like your own family doesn't even understand why you're doing what you're doing. Or if there's somebody you've been friends with for years that is like, you're kind of doing way too much for your family member, like, you should quit doing that. And I think it's hard when, you feel that sense of obligation, that sense of duty, and so you absolutely know that you cannot quit. Like, they rely on you, right? But at the same time, you can see that they're noticing that it's tearing away at you, that it's taking away your personality. And I'm not even going to pretend to say I know the perfect answer in these situations of how you balance all these things. But I do know that there are times that maybe your responsibility is to focus 100% on your family. I love the analogy of balancing spinning plates. You could have 50 plates, 50 different things you want to do. Maybe it's your hobby, maybe it's your spin class, maybe it's your children, maybe it's your parents that you're taking care of, right? There may be a period in time of your life where you are going to go 100% focused on your kids. And then there's another period of time where they're grown up and now you're focusing on your parents or you're focusing on your career, right? Like, it doesn't mean that you have to balance all 50 plates at the same time, because that's impossible to do. But sometimes you have to put something down to make space for something else. And so, if there is a time in your life where you have to cut other things out to focus on being a caregiver, that's just how it has to be sometimes, right? I would hope that it's going to be short term and that you're going to be able to return to these other things. But I know that there are cases sometimes where that is long term what you have to focus on. So I think the main thing to remember here is that you're the only one that can see everything. People are going to absolutely judge what you're doing. But at the end of the day, you have to do what's right for you. Number 23 is that when caregivers find real community, I think that it changes everything. Because I have seen the look in people's faces when I first meet with them before we actually go and record the podcast episode, to hear them talking about their stories and to just feel the power behind, like, wow, yeah, I do have a cool story. I do have advice worth sharing. I am a real human being that just went through something hard, and now there's people that want to, learn from me. There's people that want to support me. There's people that understand how hard this is. There's just so much power to that, and to being able to see, when people have commented or sent me a DM and other people will comment back and share advice. I think there's just so much power in surrounding yourself with people that understand you, as much as you're going to have other people in your own family that can't understand. Being able to find other people that do understand, it just helps tremendously to help you not feel alone. Number 24 is that most caregivers don't care about sharing their stories. Even the ones that do have a book or, start an Instagram page or something. I don't think it's out of, self-motivation or that they're trying to brag on themselves, but it's out of a place of wanting to be understood. It's about wanting to prevent, other people that feel alone from feeling that sense of isolation, and to just know that they're not the only ones like that. And it's been, again, so inspiring to see the people that are really trying to turn their experience into something that allows them to advocate for other people. And number 25, above everything else I have discussed, is that no one is meant to carry any of this alone. And I think, thinking about all of these things, seeing how these are universal experiences for caregivers for the most part. I know there's probably some specific things I just talked about, but these shared experiences are exactly why I started this podcast, because I've seen what happens when caregivers finally feel understood. And if you see yourself in any of these, again, know that you are not the only one, and that everything you are feeling, someone else has felt it too. So if this episode made you think of someone or made you think of a conversation you've had lately, feel free to share this with them. And just whether they are another caregiver and you tell them that you hope they feel seen, or maybe you have a loved one you haven't been able to truly connect with and help them understand what you're going through, send them this episode. See if it gets them thinking about things, right? Because again, I think that is the most powerful thing you can say to someone when they are stressed out and when they're going through something like this, is just that I see you and I want to understand your perspective, and kind of open that door for dialogue. So if you've been here, whether from the beginning or you just now found this podcast, I just want to say thank you, because this space exists because of you, and we are just getting started and we have more exciting things coming. So I will see you next episode. Feel free to reach out in the meantime if there's anything that you want to add to this conversation, or, anything that you have learned from listening to these episodes. Please reach out and share it with me. I would love to hear from you. But I hope that you take a nice break, take care of yourself, and I will see you next episode.